Rain drums against the window of a small San Francisco apartment, turning the glass into a gray, shivering sheet. Inside, in a living room that's also an office, a studio, and a hallway, a single laptop glows on a shaky table. On the screen, in bold red letters, rent due 7 days. Brian Chesky sits hunched over the keyboard, eyes flicking between a spreadsheet of expenses and a nearly empty bank balance. He has an industrial design degree from a top school, huge dreams, and a tiny bank account. Behind him, on an old couch, his roommate Gebbia is flipping through a sketchbook. He's another design grad, Brian's old school friend. "We're done," Brian mutters, breaking the silence. "Completely, gloriously, beautifully done." Joe doesn't even look up from his drawings. "Relax. Designers don't die. We just pivot into new shapes." "Into what exactly?" Brian spins the laptop round so Joe can see the overdraft warning. "We have no clients, no salary, no savings, and San Francisco charges rent like it's a luxury watch." Just then, an email notification pings. Brian clicks it almost mechanically. The subject line reads, "Industrial Design Conference, hotels sold out." Joe sits up straighter. "Wait, that's the Big IDSA conference. Designers from all over the world are coming to town." He scrolls through the email. It explains that for the upcoming conference, every single hotel in the city is fully booked. "Great," Brian says, his voice flat. "The city makes a ton of money. We still starve. How does that help us?" Joe's designer eyes scan the room. The scuffed floor, the bare walls, the tiny kitchen, the unused air pump leaning against the wall. A slow smile spreads across his face. "What if," Joe says, his voice full of an idea, "we become the hotel?" Brian just stares at him. "You mean, rent out the couch?" "Not just the couch," Joe says, his energy building. "The whole living room. We buy a couple of air mattresses. We offer breakfast. We build a simple website. And we host designers right here during the conference. We don't have a guest room, but we do have floor." The laptop hums quietly. The rain hits the glass a little harder, like a drum roll. "You're serious," Brian says, more a statement than a question. "Dead serious. Think about it. Hotels are sold out. People are desperate. They don't need 5-star luxury. They need safe, affordable, and interesting. We may be broke, but we are not boring. We can turn this into a local designer's loft experience." Brian glances at the rent due notice, then back at the laughably small number in their bank account. He takes a deep breath. "If this works," he says slowly, "it pays rent." That afternoon, they're hauling huge boxes up the stairs. Plastic rustles as they rip them open. The old air pump squeals back to life, filling the vinyl mattresses until they rise from the floor like summoned creatures. The apartment transforms into a makeshift hostel. 2 airbeds in the living room, 1 more in Brian's room. They fold blankets with surprising precision, stealing pillows from any spare surface. On the kitchen table, their old white MacBook waits. Brian starts coding a simple site while Joe leans over his shoulder, art directing everything from the headline to the spacing between lines. The headline, "Need a place to stay for the Industrial Design Conference in San Francisco?" The subheading, "Sleep on an air bed in a designer's loft. Breakfast included. Meet creatives from around the world." They stage a few photos. With the right camera angle and crop, the airbeds look almost luxurious. The living room suddenly seems bigger, more artistic. They pin a hand-drawn map of San Francisco to the wall, circling their favorite coffee shops and cheap diners. They set a price, $80 a night per guest. 3 airbeds, 3 people, for 3 nights. If they sell out, their rent problem is solved. "Okay," Brian says, his finger hovering over the mouse. Airbed and breakfast is live. He clicks publish. Somewhere in the vastness of the internet, a small, humble website called Airbeds. Calm is born. Night comes. The city buzzes outside. But inside their apartment, it's quiet, tense. Brian keeps refreshing the website stats page. 0 visitors, he announces. Refresh. Still 0. Refresh. Still 0. An email chime breaks the silence. "Hold on," Joe says, leaning in. "We've got a request." They open their inbox. A designer from Boston writes that every hotel is booked and asks if their airbed loft is still available. Then another email, this time from an architect in India. He says he wants to meet other creatives, not just stay in an anonymous room. A third email comes from a father of 4 from Utah. He is traveling alone for once and wants something a little crazy to remember the trip by. 3 people, Brian says, half laughing in disbelief. 3 people want to sleep on our floor and pay $80 a night for it. The floor, Joe says with a grin. is officially our most valuable asset. They high-five so hard a coffee mug nearly falls off the table. The day their guests are set to arrive, the apartment has never been cleaner. The dishes are washed. The floor is swept. A candle burns, faking a sense of ambience. There's a knock at the door. A slim man with a backpack and a roll of blueprints stands outside. He's the architect from India. His eyes bright and curious. "Is this Airbed and breakfast?" he asks. "This is it," Joe says, grinning. "Welcome to the most exclusive, fully experimental hospitality concept in San Francisco. Soon." The designer from Boston arrives, a sticker-covered laptop in hand. Then the guest from Utah, a tired but excited dad with a small suitcase and a look on his face that says, "I never do stuff like this, but why not?" They get the grand tour. The kitchen is the social hub, the bathroom is shared infrastructure, and the airbeds are, according to Joe, shockingly comfortable for compressible furniture. That night, they all sit squeezed around the tiny kitchen table. There's a stack of pancakes, a pot of strong coffee, and a bottle of cheap syrup. "Back home I'd just be in some beige hotel near the airport," says the Boston designer. "This feels like I actually landed in a life, not just a city. My kids will never believe I slept on an airbed with 2 designers in San Francisco," laughs the man from Utah. The architect talks about messy cities and chaotic traffic, and how good design can make or break our everyday lives. And Brian and Joe share their own frustrations. Great portfolios, no clients, and too many nights wondering if they'd chosen the wrong career. In that small, cramped apartment, something more than just rent money was being made. Friendships were forming, ideas were being shared, and 2 broke designers, armed with nothing but 3 air mattresses and a wild idea, were accidentally laying the foundation for a company that would change how the entire world travels. It just goes to show you, sometimes the best ideas don't come from a fancy boardroom. They come from desperation, a little bit of creativity, and the willingness to just put an airbed on your living room floor. The apartment smells like coffee and pancakes and something else, possibility. The living room goes dark, and only the kitchen light stays on. Brian sits at the kitchen table, laptop open, the blue glow on his face. "Okay," he says, "that was amazing, but is this actually a business? Or just the coolest rent hack of all time?" Joe leans against the doorway, watching Brian with a half-tired smile. "Right now it's just a story," Joe says. 3 guests, 1 weekend, pancakes and good vibes. But then, Joe's eyes light up. Imagine this, every big conference, every festival, every event in every city where hotels suddenly sell out. Instead of anonymous rooms, he continues, people stay with locals, designers with designers, musicians with musicians, coders with coders. "We'd need more than this scrappy page," Brian says, tapping the laptop. He starts listing it out. Profiles.reviews.payments, calendars.support, and we'd have to convince people. Brian adds that letting strangers into their homes isn't completely insane. Hotels sell safety and predictability, Joe says. We sell something they can't, real local experience. He nods toward where their guests have been sleeping. Our job is to redesign fear into trust. Redesign fear, Brian repeats, smirking. That's a very dramatic way to say we're broke, but stubborn. Days later, Brian calls his old roommate from Boston, Nathan Blecharczyk. Nathan is a quiet, analytical engineer, the kind of person who looks at a chaotic idea and starts sketching clean diagrams in his head. They meet up. Brian and Joe pitch the concept. Nathan listens, asks practical questions, and sees a system where others see risk. He agrees to join as technical co-founder, and suddenly the wild idea has a serious engine behind it. The 3 of them push their little site, Airbeds.com, into the world. They talk about redefining travel. They hit launch around a major tech event, expecting a wave of interest. Instead, they get a ripple. A few curious people sign up, but most visitors just close the tab and move on. Then came the investors. In meeting after meeting, they tilted their heads and offered polite smiles. Interesting, but no, they said, again and again. The feedback was always the same. People won't invite strangers into their homes. Hotels already exist, another said. The idea is too strange. It will never grow beyond a tiny niche. Back at the apartment, their bank account was bleeding out. Rent and bills don't care how innovative your concept is. They just come due. The team realized they needed money just to stay alive long enough to see if the idea could actually work. So they did something completely sideways and unexpected. They decided to create a limited edition novelty cereal. They invented 2 fictional mascots, loosely tied to a big cultural moment everyone was already talking about. They designed to bold, collectible boxes with cartoon characters and tongue-in-cheek taglines. They found a small producer willing to work with them and poured around $20,000 of their precious cash into making it real. For three founders who could barely cover rent, it was a terrifying all-in bet. Then they hustled that hard. They sold the cereal online and at busy events, pitching it as a collectible with a bizarre, charming backstory. They told their story, signed boxes, and posed for photos with people who loved the underdog energy. The cereal itself was simple. What people were really buying was the humor, the ingenuity, and the feeling of backing a tiny team fighting for a dream. In the end, the numbers added up. Roughly $30,000 in revenue. It felt unreal, but it paid debts, covered rent, and bought them time. We just used collectible cereal to fund a housing startup, Brian said, staring at a stack of flattened boxes. Congratulations, Nathan said dryly. This is officially the strangest company I've ever worked for. This stunt did more than just pay the bills. It proved how far they were willing to go. That resourcefulness caught the attention of experienced mentors in the startup world. A well-known accelerator reached out and invited them into its program. The deal? Around $20,000 in funding for a small slice of the company. The money wasn't huge, but the signal was powerful. You're not crazy. Keep going. Inside the accelerator, their goal became painfully clear. Reach ramen profitability. That meant earning enough for the three founders to cover basic living costs, about $4,000 a month from real customers booking real stays. No more survival tricks, just product and users. So they got to work. They visited their early hosts in person, helping them rearrange furniture and take better photos so rooms looked welcoming instead of awkward. They rewrote the website copy so it sounded less like cheap floor space and more like stay in real homes with real people. They rebuilt the product again and again. Safer payments, better messaging, verified reviews, clearer profiles. Hosts began to sign up slowly at first, curious but cautious. Guests started taking a chance on staying in someone's home instead of a hotel. The map of listings spread from their city to others, tiny dots of trust appearing around the world. Nights booked became their scoreboard, each booking a tiny vote that said, "Yes, this makes sense." One night, Brian was staring at a graph on his screen. For months, the revenue line had crawled along the bottom, barely moving. Now, finally, it crossed a line they'd been watching for weeks. "Come here," he called out. "You both need to see this." Joe and Nathan gathered around the laptop. "Our monthly revenue," Brian said, pointing at the screen, "just passed $4,000. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "From people sleeping in spare rooms and on couches. From people trusting each other enough to try a different way to travel," Joe said. "This," Brian said quietly, "is the moment we don't need anyone's permission to keep going." From there, the numbers stopped looking like an accident and started looking like a pattern. In just a few years, the little site that began with 3 Airbeds and 3 guests grew into a global platform. Millions of stays, millions of hosts and travelers. A brand that almost everyone who travels has heard of. Eventually, the company went public with a multi-billion-dollar valuation, becoming one of the most recognizable names in modern travel. Let's recap. 3 Airbeds, 3 guests at around $80 a night. 1 strange serial experiment that brought in $30,000. A $20,000 seed check. A survival target of $4,000 a month. Then very gradually global scale. From the inside, it never looked like a perfect master plan. It looked like panic plus creativity, rejection plus persistence, fear plus design. And now the focus shifts from them to you. Maybe you're in a small room right now, staring at a bill that feels bigger than your options. Maybe you have an idea that sounds too weird every time you try to explain it. Maybe you've heard no so often it echoes in the quiet. The story of Airbed is not just about air mattresses. It's about 3 people, Brian Chesky, Joe Gebbia, and Nathan Blecharczyk, who chose to treat their situation as a prototype instead of a dead end. They didn't wait for the idea to look huge. They didn't wait until everyone understood it. They started with 3 guests, 1 weekend, and a website that barely held together, but it was real. That's the part that matters for you. Your idea doesn't have to be big on day one. It just has to be real enough that a few people are willing to pay for it, try it, or share it. Your first target isn't a giant valuation. It is your version of ramen profitability, the point where your project can feed itself, so you can keep going. People will say it's strange. They said that about letting strangers stay in strangers' homes. They were sure it would never work. But somewhere between this is ridiculous and this changed my life. There is one key moment. The moment you stop only thinking and finally take action. So when this story ends, the real question isn't whether those founders were lucky. The real question is, what are you going to build with your own weird, fragile, not yet proven idea? And what tiny, practical step are you willing to take today to move it from your head into the real world? Thanks for watching. If this story inspired you, be sure to like and subscribe for more.